2024 is almost over, and it blows my mind that we are already at the end of the year talking about our favorite films of the year, sometimes our worst, the most underrated, and of course, going into 2025 talking about our most anticipated films, which you're going to get lists for all of those. But what we're focusing in on today is the best movies of 2024. We want to start with that positivity. And 2024 has been an amazing year, at least for me personally. I got married, we had a kid. It has been a great year. And in terms of for movies, I think there's been some amazing films this year. I also think there's just been a lot of mediocre movies. But with that said, it's still hard for me to just tie down to 10 films. So today you're going to be getting my top 20 movies of 2024. The first 10 I'm going to talk about, they're going to be a little bit faster. And then the last 10, that's when I'm going to get into the meat and potatoes of everything. But definitely please leave your thoughts down below. What are your favorite movies of 2024? Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button for more content like this. And without further ado, let's start this video. Coming down at my number 20 is a big surprise for me. Now, I love the director of this. He did a film called Green Room a couple years back, and I just absolutely adored that movie. But this film kind of had a really rocky road to getting made, and that is Rebel Ridge. Now, this is a Netflix original, and I would go as far to say it is personally, for me, one of my favorite Netflix originals. I think a lot of Netflix originals kind of have this hit or miss take to it. Sometimes they're amazing, sometimes they're okay, sometimes they're just fine and forgettable. But for me, Rebel Ridge is one of the big, bright stars of this year. And I also love that it is a starring vehicle for Aaron Pierre. And it's all kind of centering around kind of like a heist, a dirty cops, a bad town, a small town, in fact, too, and just a lot of crime to it. And what the director does so well is bringing that tension. I think for me, the reason I loved Rebel Ridge was because of Aaron Pierre and specifically how the action was shot. I was always intrigued with this movie and I never wanted it to end. Coming down to my number 19 is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, a successful bringing back of the Apes franchise, which was kind of surprising to me. I was not excited for this film. I didn't watch a single trailer for this movie. I think Wes Ball was a decent director, but really he's taking on the Apes franchise that Matt Reeves just perfected, and man, was I wrong. This film instantly made me love the new characters just as much as I loved Caesar by the end of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. It has a fantastic villain. It has a great establishment of where this world is 300 years later after Caesar's death, and the fact that Wes Ball took the idea of how do civilizations take the word of others and twist and turn it, and what it can mean for one person that it can mean for another. And I found Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes to be a great film in the Apes franchise, and I cannot wait to see what they bring up next within this film. Get into my number 18, which is The Bike Riders, another film that I was excited for, but didn't know if it was going to be my cup of tea. And this is one of those rewatchable movies for me personally. I loved diving into this bike club. I loved learning about each and every one of the characters. And I know that this film was a little bit mixed with most audience members, but for me, it was like the Goodfellas of biking, motorcycle clubbing. And as someone who's never really been that intrigued with that whole element, this film just intrigued the ever-living shit out of me. I thought Austin Butler was really good in here. I thought Jodie Comer was great. But for me, Tom Hardy's performance is one of my favorites in this. And it's, for me, one of my favorite performances from him in years. The Bike Riders just has this specific essence and decade that it brings to life and tells a story that just latches you in. And like I said, it's like Goodfellas. For me, my only issue with The Bike Riders, and the reason that it's not in my actual top 10, is I just thought the film was a little bit too long and didn't give us too much emotional depth. But it was definitely a film that brought me back into that time period, and I loved it. We get into my number 17, which is Alien Romulus, which if you followed me in like kind of my path on Alien, just talking about it on this channel, one thing I've really just been excited for is Fede Alvarez doing a new Alien movie. But I also kind of wish that he was just doing something more original. And the fact that he did center on Alien made me excited to see what he can reimagine into this universe. But also, before this film had come out, I wasn't like the biggest Alien fan. Then I went back and rewatched all the movies, and you can check out my ranking. I don't want to get into that here, but my ranking was so different than a majority of people that I talked to. And I was a little bit worried to talk about it and push it out there. And then I saw like the fans of the Alien franchise, and what I will give major props to is everyone is very nice. Like, everyone had different favorites. I saw someone even had Alien 4 as their favorite, which is my least favorite. But I kind of get it. I understand. And what I loved about Alien Romulus was it was kind of the greatest hits of the Alien franchise, while Fede Alvarez got his own thing to it all. Alien Romulus is a badass time at the movies with some great horror, and I think, again, with those greatest hits, it works. And then you get to that last 20 minutes, and I just absolutely loved it. It went full Fede Alvarez, and I cannot wait to see what he has in store next for us. And we get into my number 16, and that is Transformers 1, a film that I was so excited for when it was announced. Then that trailer came out, and it looked like garbage. Absolute garbage. I thought, what was Josh Cooley doing here? I loved what he did with Toy Story 4. I know that wasn't for everybody, but the fact that he was taking on Transformers and they were going to do this whole CGI Transformers film on Cybertron, this should be amazing. And the animation didn't win me over in that trailer. The story didn't win me over. The characters, nothing. It seemed like pure trash. And my God, it is amazing. I started to get the sense that it was going to be a little bit better once the second trailer premiered, once we were at Comic-Con, and they showed us a couple of things to it. But this is a film that I cannot believe how amazing it is. I loved this film. I wish it was just a little bit longer to establish a couple different changes, specifically with Megatron. But the fact that we get to see Optimus Prime and Megatron's friendship and like what happens when your friend breaks bad, basically, and you understand why he is. I loved this and how deep it really went into, and not even just on the Transformers level, but genuinely on a human level. It's something that anyone can relate to, and I really, really love this film. Get into my number 15, and that is Civil War. This is Alex Garland's brand new film, and I go as far as say I think it is actually the scariest movie of the year, mostly because of the tension, the sound design, and everything that it just feels real. It feels like something that could happen tomorrow. And I love, and I know not a lot of people love this, but I love that Alex Garland didn't really give a fuck about telling a political story. He told a human story. And from the journalist perspectives, who it's kind of a love letter to journalists and what they're able to portray. And I like that it was never they were for this side or this side. There's things that you can obviously debate to and see what works. But the fact that Civil War never dove into that was something that I personally loved. And I just loved that, again, it was from the journalist point of view, which, again, the performances in here are great. We get into my number 14, which is Gladiator II, Strength and Honor, a sequel that I had no interest in either. The trailer was solid, but Ridley Scott is very hit or miss. Sometimes he makes amazing movies, such as The Last Duel, which I was a massive fan of, and then he makes films like House of Gucci, which was terrible, and Napoleon, which was terrible, and The Counselor, which was terrible, and the list can go on and on from there, but I honestly, I've found Ridley Scott to be a little bit of an overrated director. It's hard for me to get excited for anything that man does. And Gladiator 2, I think, is just an awesome movie. I think it's a really good sequel that builds off the original and made me go, okay, I actually like this direction. This is kind of how history repeats itself. I wish the film was longer. I know that might not be for everybody because it's already a really long movie, but I think 20 minutes more could have really established certain changes for characters, but it is such a fun and entertaining time and an awesome one at that I was just hyped beyond belief. And I think Paul Mescal really showcased to me here that he really could pull this off. I also thought Connie Nielsen was phenomenal in here. Pedro Pascal, amazing. But Denzel Damn Washington, amazing. Then we get into my number 13, which is a film probably a lot of you guys haven't seen yet since it's only in LA and New York, and that is The Brutalist. The Brutalist is a monumental achievement, one that I think is a perfect masterpiece and one that will be studied for years to come. It was this close to getting into my top 10. I just did not have enough time to rewatch this one because it is very long and has an intermission, but it is a movie that I completely adored and one that, wow, just phenomenal. At my number 12 is A Complete Unknown. Timothée Chalamet completely transformed into Bob Dylan, and what really showcased me here is specifically someone who didn't really grow up with Bob Dylan's music but always appreciated it and do enjoy certain songs. But what I was really wanting to see from this film is Timothée Chalamet truly transform into an icon. I love him as Paul Atreides. Of course, I love him in A Beautiful Boy, and I think he's a phenomenal actor, but I've been waiting for that star-studded role where it really showcases him as an actor, and we've seen a lot of stuff. I mean, this guy is amazing, but I think this is his best performance yet, and the entire cast is amazing. My number 11 is Conclave, a film that I thought was going to be complete Oscar bait. I was not excited for this movie, and then I walked away and I was like, oh my God, that film is amazing. And it's only gotten better the more that I've thought about it, and specifically on a second rewatch. I think this movie is so thrilling, so on edge, and specifically Ralph Fiennes is phenomenal. Edward Berger does an amazing job also directing this, but this is just one of those movies that breaks down a lot of different sociology stuff and specifically breaks down religion, but to a degree that I was not expecting. Voting for the new pope, who will be the new pope, that was all intriguing stuff, and they dumbed it down, but made it feel smart in a way. And the fact that it's all a talkie-talkie thriller just invited me to want to revisit this one again. Now we lead into my top 10 favorite movies of 2024. We might have gotten the other 10 out of the way, but now we're leading into the top 10, and these films may not be some of the best of the year. Some of these might just be my personal favorites, and that's kind of how this entire list is. So if some of these films weren't your cup of tea, that's okay. If some of them are, that's even better. But at my number 10 is The Fall Guy. My most rewatched movies this entire year. I found Ryan Gosling to be phenomenal in this. I found Emily Blunt to be great, and I'm a sucker for romantic comedies, and when you add action to it, it's even to a higher degree of how big of a fan I can be with those. And for me, The Fall Guy just nailed every single category. It is criminally underrated, and the fact that this film bombed at the box office still disappoints me. It is hands down David Leitch's best movie, and it just has everything that you could want from an action rom-com. The jokes land, the humor's there, the romance is stellar, and again, Ryan Gosling is just perfect. I could have watched 10 of these movies, and it sucks that we will never get another one. Get into my number 9, and this is Challengers. Now, Challengers for me not only features the best score of the year, but also features some of the best performances of this year, specifically from Zendaya. And also, this is Luca Guadagnino's best movie yet. Also, shout out to Luca Guadagnino. He did a phenomenal job with Queer as well. I thought that was a really underrated movie too. I just wasn't a biggest fan of the back half, but the first half was amazing, and Daniel Craig did a great job in there too. But we're speaking about Challengers, so I'm going to stay on there. And this movie was different than what I expected it to be. I expected it to be more of this sexual thriller that was this kind of love triangle between the bunch. And for the most part, it does have that, but it is a more thrilling aspect in terms of the way that they tell the story. They go back and forth from this tennis match. And the fact that the script is so well written, the score is so well enhanced, the editing is to a whole other degree, and Luca Guadagnino is firing on all cylinders. This is one of the best films of the year, and personally one of my favorites that I loved going back to this year. Into my number 8, which is Longlegs, a film that I personally find to be a complete masterpiece. I know this film wasn't for everybody, and I also understand that it kind of disappointed some, specifically because of all the hype, but while I don't find this film to be the scariest movie I've ever seen, I find it to be one of the most engaging horror films or horror thriller films that I've seen in quite a while. Now, from the direction from Osgood Perkins, which I think is great, to the hidden Satan kind of symbols in the background, which just still get under my ears and like my whole entire body and give me goosebumps. I'm getting some right now. To Micah Monroe's fantastic performance, to Nicolas Cage's fantastic performance. But the thing that really got me is the fact that this feels like the X-Files in a horror universe. Like, I could get 5 different Longlegs with Micah Monroe's character playing different and going into different roles in different situations in different cases, and I'd be completely for it. The film locked me in. It never felt slow for me. It always intrigued me with what was going to happen next. And again, for me, this is one of the best films of 2024, and it stays with you. I mean, at least for me, like, while I don't think it is the scariest thing, the doll stuff really got under my skin. And I remember that night, the night after I watched this, I was laying down going to bed, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and it was a dream. I was having a dream, but the dream was a doll in our house, and it scared the shit out of me, I can't lie. Now, my number 7 is Nosferatu. Now, Nosferatu I've seen twice now, and it is fantastic. It is amazing, and it's a masterpiece too. I initially reviewed it. I wasn't there yet. There were certain things that I needed to just improve itself on a second rewatch, and after rewatching it again, it feels like one of those gothic fables that you would only imagine and dream of, and Robert Eggers delivers all of that in spades. Personally excited to see more of what the general going audience thinks of Nosferatu, because it is a very different type of movie. It feels old school, and I think that's what Robert Eggers just delivers on. The scares, I wouldn't say are the scariest, but I would say they are unfathomably intense every single moment. Specifically, the opening scene, or not the opening scene, but the first scene that you get with Count Orlok and, of course, Nicholas Holt's character, and that dialogue, that discussion was so strong. And Bill Skarsgård is unrecognizable as Count Orlok. When I saw the makeup, I mean, the makeup is amazing and a lot is to blame there, but the voice, the eyes, because Bill Skarsgård has really iconic eyes. All of it was just indescribable and camouflaged, and he was phenomenal as Nosferatu, or of course Count Orlok. And Lily Rose Depp, I know she took the role originally from Anya Taylor-Joy, and that, you know, was disappointing to everybody, but after watching this, I don't know if I could see Anya Taylor-Joy do this role the way that Lily Rose Depp did. She was perfect and phenomenal in this, and I loved Nosferatu. We get into my number 6, which is a film that you're either a big fan of, you think is so much fun, or you absolutely hate it, and either one of those, that is completely okay. And at my number 6, it's Deadpool and Wolverine. Now, for me, this was my most anticipated film of the year, but also the film that I was the most nervous about, mostly because could they pull it off? Could bringing Hugh Jackman out of Wolverine retirement actually work? Could a Deadpool's film in the MCU actually work? And can you bring that same embodiment from the other 2 Deadpool films? Now, the second one was a little bit disappointing to me, but specifically the first, where it's that heart, sincere, and being able to find that through line with Wade Wilson, and they did it in spades. I think the heart of this film is so strong, and it is one of the most fun experiences I've had. I got to see this film 3 times in theaters. The first time at a press screen, the second time at San Diego Comic-Con in a Hall H panel where they surprised the audience, and number 3, I got to see it with my wife and sister, and every single time was a joyous moment. But as fun as I can have with this film, as fun and awesome as the multiverse and cameos can be, the thing I was really wanting was that heart. And I think Shawn Levy delivered that in awesome, awesome ways. But Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds' performances was fantastic. Their banter we knew was going to be great, and we honestly shouldn't have expected anything less. But the thing that really surprised me in those moments was the fact that when they're building off these characters, I think the car scene is one of the biggest ones that you can really look at when they're discussing their life. And Wade is trying to find that purpose, that meaning. And this version of Wolverine is also trying to find that purpose and that meaning. And I've always found that, like, sometimes we find ourselves in our midlife crises in different times of our life where we wonder what is next. And the fact that Deadpool and Wolverine could establish that really won me over and had to be in my top 10. We get into my number 5, my top 5, guys. My number 5 is The Substance, a horror masterpiece, a body horror masterpiece. This was such a great year for horror, by the way. Like, even films that didn't make my top 20, there's so much I enjoyed, like Terrifier 3, Abigail, but The Substance was something that I almost missed. I almost missed the press screening. I didn't have, like, the time, and I had to make time for this once a lot of the early reactions started coming out, and wow, it is amazing. The director of this, who did Revenge quite a few years ago, really came off in a stamp on that directorial feature, and when I knew she was directing The Substance, I knew we were probably going to get something special here, but I didn't know what we were getting. And to watch this film in the way that it kind of impacts and talks about beauty, our inner thoughts, and very much showcasing those inner thoughts into the most goriest and disgusting manners. The Substance nails all that. It is very much in your face. It is not going to be for everybody. It is very long and is really much, the point is making you feel scared of yourself, but also understanding that those are all of our inner thoughts, but just displaying it in a very grotesque way. And while Margaret Qualley and Demi Moore are phenomenal in this, I really think the direction is the strongest aspect of The Substance. And I don't want to say any more in case you haven't seen it yet, but I highly recommend it. And at my number 4, another underrated movie of the year that sadly bombed, and that is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. One of my favorite prequels of all time, and honestly, I think only makes Fury Road a better movie. Now, Furiosa, I absolutely loved, and it was a film that I didn't think we really needed. I thought it was a little bit too late. I don't know why we're getting this. And then I saw the trailer, and I was like, this looks awesome. Of course, it's George Miller. I'm going to be there first day. And it proved me wrong. It proved me wrong that, yes, we did need this prequel. Yes, it only enhances and makes Mad Max Fury Road one of my favorite action films of all time a better movie. And Furiosa is a different beast of itself. Yes, it has action. Yes, it has car chases. Yes, it has all that Mad Max flair that you're absolutely going to want. but it most importantly develops the Mad Max world, the wasteland itself, into a character of its own, which was a character in Fury Road, but develops it in a higher degree. So if you're a fan of Fury Road, you're going to be a fan of Furiosa. If you're a fan of Furiosa and you haven't seen Fury Road, well, it's the perfect tie-in, and they are the perfect matches. Like, now when you watch Furiosa, you're going to want to jump right into Fury Road, and vice versa. I don't feel like you can watch Fury Road anymore without watching Furiosa, because that is the prologue to everything, and Fury Road is that climax that you truly get. Anya Taylor-Joy is amazing. I don't know the little girl who plays the younger version of her in here, but she's great. And Chris Hemsworth, honestly, if it was up to me at the Oscars, he should be nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Then we get into my number 3, and my number 3 is Anora. I think this is kind of like the uncut gems of this year. It's very, very much Uncut Gems meets Pretty Woman with Sean Baker's flair onto it. Now, if you've never seen a Sean Baker film, they are very straightforward. They're very in your face, but also showcasing elements of our United States that I don't think are really touched on in any sort of degree, and showcasing them into complete different lights, and despicable lights even at times too. And this one showcases a prostitute and her life, and trying and possibly getting her Disney princess life. And Anora, for me, nailed every single aspect that I did want it to be. It added some sensibilities of love, it added some sensibilities of heartbreak, it added some sensibilities of wanting to feel love, wanting to change your life, wanting to have that princess dream, which you can clearly tell us through her character. Mikey Madison is amazing in this for me. She is my personal favorite actress performance of the year. But even on top of that, what Sean Baker delivers as a director and a writer here, I think is to the strongest degree in his career. That's even above The Florida Project. That's even above Red Rocket, 2 phenomenal films as well. But he showcases and really much goes into detail and more of an appreciation of this type of profession, which is not something that everybody looks fond of. But I loved how he handled Anora, and it gave me a newfound appreciation for that, but also a new outlook. And I really like how this film handles that. And going into the Uncut Gems part, the film completely twists and changes what it is and becomes a hilarious comedy, specifically towards like the middle part, but also a thrilling one, not knowing where it's going to go. And the film was ever changing, but always feeling real in its situation, that I absolutely loved. Get into my number 2, and I've gone back and forth if this is my favorite film or not, but sadly I've only gotten to see this film once, so I'm going to leave it at my number 2, and that is The Wild Robot. I think this is one of the best animated films of all time. I would even go as far to say it is the best DreamWorks film of all time. And this film kind of came out of nowhere. Like, Chris Sanders has been really much developing this for a while. He also developed and created Lilo and Stitch, which I still think is the best Disney animated film of all time. But The Wild Robot looked like, okay, the animation looks stunning. This is going to be unique. It's a robot in the forest. Okay, let's see where this goes. And as I mentioned earlier in this video, you know, this year is big. Me and my wife got married. We had a kid, our first kid. And this came out, when we saw this, it was just a month or 2 before we had our son. And I'm really trying hard not to get emotional during this, but the way that it actually views and touches into the parental aspect and how hard and how much that showcases, like, really brought a lot of emotion to me. And I liked how the film completely kept changing itself. And I can understand some frustration to some people, how it feels like 3 different storylines, but I feel like it's showcasing, what is the purpose of this robot? What is your purpose? Okay, parental figure, that's what this purpose is. Okay, then it's going to dive into this and raising. And the fact that it was just that through line through all these different events that kept happening to Roz was one of the most special things I've ever seen. It's one of the most gorgeous films of the year as well. But I truly think this is the best thing DreamWorks has ever made. And if I were to like rank every animated film I've ever seen, I mean, I would honestly put The Wild Robot in my top 10. Shout out to the score. Amazing score. My number 1 of the year, and it's been my number 1 basically since March. I kind of went back and forth with a couple of these movies, but my number 1 of the year is Dune 2. Dune 2 is about everything I needed this film to be. As a fan of the book, I wanted this film to deliver on its climax, and it delivered in spades. It feels like the perfect iteration with Dune 1 and Dune 2 kind of put together, and I think now you just have this perfect duology of it all, and I can't wait to see what Denis Villeneuve does next with his 3rd film. I personally think Denis Villeneuve is the best director working right now. Him and Chris Nolan are like back-to-back, just no matter what they make, they just continue to stun us with incredible movies. But Dune Part 2 just elevated the material. It brought to life everything I could want. And I think the only thing I would have liked a little bit more of, is that the film's a little bit longer, is to develop some more of the political landscapes in terms of like the Space Guild and stuff like that. But that's getting such in a nerdy route. Just basing it on what we have, developing more and showcasing the Harkins, which first off, Austin Butler is so phenomenal in this. I just have to give him a big standout. But also Zendaya, phenomenal. Javier Bardem, who I know has been memed to hell this entire year, I think delivers one of my favorite performances of this year as well. And Timothy Chalamet as Paul Atreides was great. What Greg Fraser does with the cinematography in here is undeniably magical. And again, Denis' direction, he brought to life Dune and made it a cinematic event. And I found Dune Part 2 to be everything I wanted and more. Of course, that's my top 20 for 2024. Please leave your thoughts down below. Hit that like and subscribe button. I cannot wait to see your guys' list. And of course, until next time, stay classy.